It was a really good week for the big two. And at the same time, it was a really good week for some of my favorite female characters. And I didn't forget about the indies either. It's time for another episode of the Comic Bin Comic Book Podcast.
It's time for the Comic Bin Comic Book Podcast. The podcast you look forward to for all of your news and reviews of the best comic books hitting stands. Whether it's DC,
Batman, Wonder Woman,
Marvel,
Spider-Man,
Image,
Spawn, Saga,
Boom,
Once and Future, Power Rangers,
or whatever book or publisher you follow,
we cover them all here.
this is the place for you.
That's right, it's for everyone.
This is the Comic Bin Comic Book Podcast.
Let's get it.
Hey folks, welcome to another episode of the Comic Bin Comic Book Podcast. I am your host, Theo. Got a quick episode for you this week. I'm going to do my honorable mentions and then give you my top 5 for this past week of my favorite books before looking at what we're going to be doing next week. So not much news going on. I am prepping for con season. I'll give a little bit more details at the end of the show regarding that with the shows that I'll be attending thus far throughout the rest of this year. You know, I've already been talking about San Diego, so you know that's on the horizon. But there are a few other shows on the calendar that I'll be covering this year. So I would be talking a little bit about that before closing out the show. But again, not much news. Solicitations don't come out for another couple of weeks, so there's nothing on that front. So no interviews. So with that, let's just go ahead and jump into our top 5. But before we do that, let's talk about the honorable mentions. All right. So as is our new tradition here, before jumping into the top 5, let's talk about those honorable mentions, those titles that I really enjoyed this past week that just weren't quite good enough to crack into the top 5. First up, we have Heatseeker Exposed #1 from writer Charles Ardai with art from Ace Continuado over at Titan Comics. So we've now gotten into the E's with the Gun Honey universe that Ardai has started. If you can remember from my conversation with him at San Diego Comic-Con, he wanted to get through the alphabet between Gun Honey and Heatseeker. So we've now gotten into the E's. So we shall see if he's able to make it throughout the alphabet. I believe, if I can remember when we spoke, he wanted to, the only one he couldn't really figure out was what was going to happen for the letter I. So we'll see as we are at the letter E now, whether or not he can make it and what word he's gotten in lined up for either Gun Honey or Heatseeker. Between the two stories, I've kind of enjoyed Heatseeker more, just with the idea of Dahlia as this master of disguise. So we shall see how she is able to tackle this new adventure of hers with Heatseeker Exposed #1. Over at Mad Cave Studios, we have Endless Night #1 from writer Mark London with art from Tom Duranick. So this is a crossover of the 3 titles that is under this universe London created that is called Underworld, and that is Revolution #9, which I've covered a few times here on the podcast as well as on the site, as well as Hour of the Wolf and Exit City. So it's a crossover between those titles, and actually it's not a crossover. Endless Night is going to be the crossover within that one story. It's not going to cross into any of the individual titles. It's all going to be within the Endless Night story. But that was a good start for this, considering I had to go back and reread Hour of the Wolf and Exit City. I know when everything first started, I was struggling to see how they were a part of the same universe, considering how they are each established, especially Exit City and Hour of the Wolf, which Hour of the Wolf is more supernatural and Exit City is more technological, as it is this extravagant city out in the middle of the Pacific, not in the middle, but off the coast of California. So enjoyed the first issue. Can't wait to see what happens in the next one. Over at DC Comics, we have JSA number 8 from writer Jeff Lemire with art from Gavin Guidry. So we finally know Wutan's ultimate plan with what we've been seeing since the start of this series. But what I truly enjoyed most about this issue was the art and the classic JSA look that we got to start the issue. It was really good. I truly enjoyed that classic JSA look with Hawkman and Hawkgirl and all of the original members of the JSA. Then staying at DC, we have Birds of Prey number 22 from writer Kelly Thompson with art from Sammy Basri. So yeah, that ending was kind of a surprise, but it should not be expected considering the fact that the birds have been under attack these last few issues. And so we see another attack on one of the members take place. This time it's Babs, as she is hidden up in not the watchtower, but the headquarters for the birds. So we shall see how she survives that. And then finally, we have another new series, this time over at Marvel Comics. We have Ultimate Spider-Man Incursion number 1 from writers Cody Ziegler, Dennis Camp with art from Jonas Schaff. I was really hoping this could crack into the number 5, but it didn't. Not that it was bad. Again, I enjoyed the story. However, it was really just kind of slow as it looked at Miles as he was crossing it into the Ultimate Universe to look for his sister. And we kind of see, those things play out until the end where we see where Miles is grabbed by Wasp and Ant-Man. Now, the one question that I do have is, where is this story in the timeline of everything with the Ultimate Universe, considering we saw in the last issue of the Ultimates that Wanda is this mole for Nick Fury. So we shall see how that all plays out. So not Wanda, I'm sorry, but Janet is a mole for Nick Fury. So we shall see how that all plays out. Again, I don't know where it is in the timeline, considering the Ultimates is Dennis Camp's story. So hopefully that that somehow gets answered at some point, and then maybe it won't, and I'll just be lost. Again, I kind of have issues when these stories within a universe don't necessarily say where things are in the timeline, but we shall see. But those are my honorable mentions for this week. With that being said, let's go on and jump into the top 5. All right, so as I mentioned in my pre-intro, it was a really good week for the Big Two as they dominated most of the top 5 spots this week. But it was also a really good week for 3 of my favorite female characters, 2 of which appear in my number 5 book. And that number 5 book is Storm number 9, written by Mirwa Ayadel and Lucas Warnick over at Marvel Comics. And so I have loved what they've been doing with building up Storm as much as they've had done over the past few years. And you even see it now when you look at the cover where it lists her as Earth's mightiest mutant. But I think she is far more than that. And I love how they are depicting her as such. And so we not only have that with her, we see in this current story arc that her body has kind of been taken over by eternity. And that's going to be playing a whole lot into what's going on over the next few issues as eternity is using her with its mission to take out his brother Oblivion. Uh, but we see by the end of the issue that Oblivion is already dead, and we're going to see how that all plays out. But what I also truly enjoyed about this issue is again the fact that my other favorite Marvel female character also makes an appearance, and that is Jennifer Walters, aka She-Hulk. And one of the issues that I have complained about with Marvel since they canceled her series by Rainbow Rowell is when she has made appearances in the pages of Marvel Comics, she hasn't really looked strong. But here she does. And so while Storm is being interrogated by the FBI, if you can remember, she was arrested because of her role in assisting and abetting Charles Xavier during the X-Manhunt mini arc crossover event that they had a few months ago. But they are still interrogating her, or at least the alien agent is still interrogating her. But while this is going on, we see that Jen is at the sanctuary, and there's some, I'll just go ahead and say that there are some wrestling matches going on, and she is taking on Strong Guy. And man, she just wells one punch on him after he kind of got the goods on her, but she just lays him out. And you can see in the credits as they're talking about all of those who were in their individual battles, how she beat them. But not only was she strong as far as that physical event or that altercation, not necessarily altercation, but that battle she had with Strong Guy, but she also looked really strong as legal counsel for Aurora, where they figured out that there was more behind this story of them questioning Storm about her role in Xavier's escape, but that they were trying to break into the sanctuary to find its energy source to take. And Jen and the rest of the folks at the sanctuary figure this out, and she goes and she accosts those agents not as a superhero, but as Storm's legal counsel, and basically blast this travel ball that they're in all the way back to FBI headquarters where they're still interrogating Aurora, and basically bust in there like, yeah, my client is leaving now, and if you want to continue this conversation, we can do so in court. And then it was really funny where she says, but let me just warn you, I am much meaner in front of a jury. So she's basically telling the government to not try her. So I really enjoyed that. But again, despite all that, the main focus of this story is Eternity's infiltration and taking over Storm's body, so much so that she can't remember what he's doing. She just knows that he's there. And we see that Eternity has captured another being that he was hoping to use in his battle against his brother Oblivion. But again, by the time the issue ends, we see that Oblivion has already been killed, and the murderer is now on a mission to come after Eternity as well. So we shall see how that all plays out. But again, I have loved how they have made Storm as strong as she is. This is something that is well deserved for a character of her stature. and I really, really love it. Not only in the pages of our own series, but also in the pages of the Avengers as well. We see she's just on another level with the rest of the heroes, and I truly appreciate that. She's been one of my favorite characters since the start of my comic book reading history, and just love everything that they're doing. And the art from Lucas Warnick, I love his depiction of Storm and how he draws her. I mean, it just, when you look at the dialogue from Iredale and how she is just this calm yet strong and smart woman who just was able to figure everything out, what the government was attempting to do, and you add that with the strong pencils and the artwork from Lucas Warnick and the rest of the artistic team on colors, you just get a great story. And like I said, I truly enjoy how they're just they've been they've been elevating Storm's status over the last few years, going back to Hickman's run on the X-Men. And I just enjoy it, and I'm continuing to enjoy it. But that is my number 5 book for this week, Storm number 9 from Mirwa Ayadel, Lucas Warnick over at Marvel Comics. Okay, in the number 4 spot, Batgirl number 8, written by Tate Brownville with art from Isaac Goodhart over at DC Comics. We have my third favorite female character for this week and my favorite Batgirl in Cassandra Cain. We continue this new story arc with the Book of Shiva as we are learning more and more about the origins of the woman who would become the mother of Cassandra Cain. And I truly enjoy what Tate Brownville has been doing with adding all of these layers and adding more to the mythos of Cassandra through not only her story, but through the stories of those around her, primarily with Lady Shiva, her mother. And it's just been a great ride with this current run from Tate. And so we see in Batgirl number 8 how Shiva, and her pseudonym as Sandra, and her sister Carolyn, how they meet the gentlemen, Richard Dragon and Benjamin Turner, aka Bronze Tiger. And we see how, they became friends and became, in some instance, more than friends. When you look at Carolyn and Bronze Tiger, their relationship up into the point where she is killed. So that was a story there. And what we also see is we also see Shiva's first interaction with David Kane, who turns out being the individual who actually kills Carolyn. And it's just a crazy story seeing how all of that played out. But I have my theory as to where this might go. I don't think Carolyn, and this is just me theorizing, I could be wrong. And most of the time, when I say I could be wrong, 9 times out of 10, I am. But I don't think Carolyn is dead. I think she was resurrected at some point, as can happen in comics, especially in DC Comics. But I think that she is either this unnamed leader of the Unburied, who has yet to make an appearance, or I think she returned to her uncle, or her uncle retrieved her body, and she is back with the blood. And if you can remember from part 1 of this story arc, the blood was this cult of ninja that was led by the man who killed Carolyn and Sandra's father and mother, and who also turns out to be their uncle. So just a crazy story and family ties and craziness with that. But I really don't think Carolyn is dead. I ultimately think she's gonna turn up with the Unburied and being the leader of the Unburied. I mean, we know the story as to why why they were in pursuit of Shiva, with regards to how, she infiltrated the Unburied land and destroyed a whole bunch of those flowers. But somehow I think Carolyn is involved with that as well. Either that or I think she is now a member of the Blood. She returned to their uncle. And I don't know. I'm like I said, I'm probably wrong, but it would be really crazy if either one of those things came to fruition. So this is Isaac Goodhart's second issue uh, in the series. I would imagine that he's going to be on pencils until this arc is over. Uh, I remember in looking at the first issue of this arc, which was last issue, how it was okay, but compared to Takeshi Miyazawa's, I wasn't as big of a fan. Um, Again, the art is really good. I do like it. I still prefer Miyazawa's art compared to it, but it wasn't bad. Yeah, I do enjoy it. I like his depiction of the sisters as well as Cassandra. You can truly tell the relation between the three of them and how he draws all three of them. But ultimately, we will see what happens next. Shiva has instructed Cassandra to find Bronze Tiger, as she feels he is probably the only one who can help Cassandra with the Unburied and this unnamed leader that is set to make an appearance again. You know, leading to meet their rising that it's going to be Carolyn. But we shall see. But again, this I have not enjoyed an issue of this series since it's made its return to comic book pages, and I am looking forward to seeing how much more Tate Bramwell can add to the mythos of Cassandra Cain as Batgirl. But again, that is my number 4 book for this week. Batgirl number 8 from writer Tate Bramwell and art from Isaac Goodhart over at DC Comics. In the number 3 spot, Imperial number 1, written by Jonathan Hickman with art from Federico Vincentini and Ivan Coelho over at Marvel Comics. So we have this event, and this event is full of Hulks and Wakandans and Novas and Guardians. Oh my, it's just a whole lot going on. So Hirokala is the second son of Bruce Banner, aka Hulk, and he is dead, and we come to find out that he's been poisoned. And so Hulk has made his way, and he's brought along with him his cousin Jen, my favorite green goddess in She-Hulk, as well as Amadeus Cho. They are all on this trip to the new Sakaar, where Hirokala was king. And so there's a lot of turmoil going on now because since Hirokala is dead, there's no heir to the throne. All of the treaties and everything that he's signed as king were annulled. He's been deemed unworthy. There's just a lot going on. But Hulk is still revered with the people of Nusakar as the World Breaker, and he leaves Jen there to travel to this meeting where these other galactic rulers or government officials are all meeting. And at this meeting, we see Peter Quill with his dad. We see the only group that we don't see actually are the Galactic Wakandans, and I have not followed that story when it was out. The Galactic, nation of Wakanda that was done a few years ago. So, I'm not that familiar with that storyline. Uh, but in the end, we find out, that not only was Hirokala killed, but a bunch of other leaders were murdered as well. And so we get a quick mystery as to how they were murdered. But in the end, we find out that the Wakandans or someone affiliated with Wakanda, the galactic nation of Wakanda, basically bought this poison that was used to murder all of these leaders, including Hirokala. And so, there's an attack at that point from the Wakandans. We see that Jason, uh, Peter Quill's dad, is murdered. So there's just a whole bunch of stuff going on. And, for Hulk just wants to find out who's responsible so that, as he says, he can throw them into a black hole. So we shall see how that plays out. But I am interested to see. We've seen in the solicits how there's going to be the spinoff that's going to focus on Jen and who she is and her place on New Sakar or Sakar and Nevo. And this story is going to lead into that, and we already see how it's going to play out, because Bruce asked her to stay there to kind of keep things in order so that the people know that, despite him not being there, despite the World Breaker not being there, a Hulk is there to keep things in order as they are going through this period of mourning. But this will supposedly lead into this spinoff with She-Hulk that I'm excited to see happen. But this was a really interesting story. Again, I am somewhat lost again, not following or not having read the Galactic Wakandan story that was out a few years ago. So, I may have to go back and skim through those pages just to see how that all played out. But it's going to be interesting to see how this ends up. I am a big fan of Jonathan Hickman. I love what he's doing on Ultimate Spider-Man. Loved how he reintroduced the X-Men a few years ago with the Hoxpox era. But yeah, I think in order for me to have a truly better grasp of everything that's going on, I may need to do some research reading with regards to Wakanda's place in this galactic authority that is going on. But very good story anyway. Was easy to follow, despite not knowing all of that history. The art was really good, despite the fact that we had two artists on the book, and it was easy to do it since they kind of broke the story down by chapters. So it made it easier to follow along. But yeah, I am interested. I'm going to remain interested. And again, there are those two spinoffs that are coming. Again, one being with She-Hulk and the other, if I can remember, it's going to be Black Panther. But, those will be coming out in the month of July. And we shall see how it all plays out. But again, that is my number 3 book for this week. Imperial #1 from writer Jonathan Hickman with art from Federico Vincentini and Iban Coelho over at Marvel Comics.
Hey, you got a second? The Comic Book Spot is looking for comic book fans with something to say. If you're interested in writing reviews of your favorite comic books, or you want to contribute original content with articles like The Top 10 Forgotten Spider-Man Villains, or Why One More Day Was the Worst Thing to Ever Happen in Comics, or maybe Why Indie Comics Saved the Comic Book Industry, then we want to invite you to join our family as a writer. Just reach out and email us at writers@thecomicbookspot.com and let us know that you want to become one of our writers. It's that easy, and honestly, there's no reason not to. You get exclusive access to our staff Discord server, you get early access to comics, and you meet a lot of cool people. What are you waiting for? Just email us at writers@thecomicbookspot.com and let us know that you want to become one of our writers.
Okay, my number 2 book for this week, Star Trek number 32, written by Jackson Lansing and Colin Kelly, with art from David Tento over at IDW Publishing. It's the final issue of this series. We only have one more story to come, and that's in Star Trek Omega. It's been a good ride, and this final issue really brought things home. It's the final issue of the Lore War. It's considered part 5 of 5, and the way the story ended was really good. And for me, that says a lot. I've said on many occasions that of the 2 books between Star Trek and Star Trek Defiant, that I felt that Defiant was the stronger story. I had trouble with this whole thing with the prophets, and just not being a huge fan of Benjamin Sisko. Please don't at me, y'all. But with this final issue, we see they really brought things home, and so we've learned over the entirety of the Lore War, over those 5 issues, that Lore has had to recreate this universe on multiple occasions, that despite his godhood, he's never been able to recreate things in the perfect image that he's wanted it to. Kind of reminds me of the Matrix, and how Agent Smith told Morpheus how they've had to recreate things multiple times, or how the guy told Neo the number of times that the Matrix had to be recreated because they just couldn't get the perfect world. And we kind of get that here as well. Lore has had to recreate the galaxy on multiple occasions because it just couldn't fit this perfect mold, this perfect model that he wanted it to be. And there's nothing he can do about it except have Data destroy everything and rebuild it again. But we see that with this current universe, that he has these hive minds, these 4 hive minds that are across the 4 quadrants of the galaxy. And to create this, he got some of Trek's biggest minds to basically, I don't want to say guard it, but it was almost as if they were monitoring all of the events going on in those particular quadrants. So in one, he had Belana Torres, he had Geordi LaForge in one, he had Miles O'Brien in one, and he had Mr. Scott in the 4th one. So for the Rebels, which included Cisco, and included Spock, and included Hugh, and included Namira, it was the sense that the best chance for them to win and to restore reality would be to disconnect these hive minds first. And they do that. They go on this mission, they distract Lore, specifically with the events of Shax, which was in Shax's worst day. And they're able to disconnect the hive minds from this matrix that Data had set up at Lore's demand. But in the end, disconnecting them didn't achieve the actual goal that Cisco was looking to do. And it was because Lore kind of figured something like that would happen, and he eliminated it. But in the end, Cisco and the rest of the team were able to overtake Lore with the help of Data and these orbs that we have seen from the beginning of this trek with Star Trek and the Bajoran prophets, and we see things come full circle. Again, I love the way they brought it to an end. Again, we don't know the final story yet. That's going to be revealed in Star Trek Omega. But I love the way they brought everything to a close. Not everyone got their memories back that Cisco did by touching Kalis's sword. And we look at someone like Beverly. She left. She wasn't on this mission. She went back home. Because she figured if this reality that I love is going to end, I'm going to spend it with those that I love. And she basically left the team. But it was just a great way to bring everything to a close and bring everyone back together, even though many of them knew that once reality returned, the right reality returned, that they may not be around. So we know Namira died, in the regular reality, and she accepted that, saying, hey, as long as it make things right. So it was a great way to end this series and to end this run from Lanzine and Kelly. And I can't wait to see how things come to a close. Now, we do know that there are other Star Trek stuff that IDW is going to be doing. We know Red Shirts is coming out in a couple of months. But with this universe, with Lanzine and Kelly's Star Trek, and with Cantwell's Defiant, this is the end of the road. And I've been enjoying it. I've been enjoying it from the start, particularly Defiant. Defiant was just top notch for me. I absolutely loved it. But can't wait to see what comes next for Star Trek in this new world. I am hoping to speak with someone at IDW, hopefully to talk a little bit more about what's next for Star Trek as we get into, this new series with Red Shirts. Lower Decks is still going on. So, there's still that. And we can always get a Strange New Worlds miniseries, as we've seen over time. We've gotten a few of those that I really enjoyed as well. But art-wise, again, the art has just been great. It really looked more like the characters that I am used to seeing on the TV screen. I remember in past reviews of Star Trek, I had some concerns that they did not, although it was not the case with Defiant. But yeah, it was really good. I really enjoyed the art from David Tento as well. His variant cover with Lore and Data was really nice. It's the one that I picked up for this week. But that is my number 2 book, the final issue of Star Trek number 32, from writers Jackson Lanzine and Colin Kelly, with art from David Tento over at IDW. Okay, we've reached the end of the road. My number 1 book for this week, or for this past week, and it is a title that I have been screaming about since I read it last Monday. My number 1 book for this week, Ultimate Wolverine number 6, written by Chris Condon with art from Alex Lenz. We've been building in the story, and I'm gonna think back. I could have sworn at some point when talking about this title that at some point I see Ultimate Wolverine overtaking Ultimate Spider-Man as my favorite Ultimate title over at Marvel. I faintly remember that. With this issue, we've reached that point. Man, everything about this particular issue was just absolutely stunning, absolutely awesome. Loved every bit of it. But that final page where Wolverine remembers who he is, and he remembers himself at the best as the best he is at what he does. That was just chef's kiss. Just everything about this particular story was great. I mean, we began with this mental journey that Logan is going on, and we see that it's being guided by Legion. So we're introduced to Legion of this universe, who turns out to be an AI, it seems, that's connected to everything. And Legion basically reveals himself to Logan and says, you have to fight all of this stuff that has been taken away from you. You have to fight these people, meaning the Rasputins. You have to fight everything that has kept you from being who you are, kept you from remembering who you are. And despite going through these psychic beings of Colossus and Magic and Omega Red, the final stage of it all, the one being that Logan had to beat in order to regain and to remember who he was beating himself. And that was just a great story from start to finish. And when I say from start to finish, it can go all the way back to the first issue when we're introduced to Logan as the Winter Soldier, and when he awakens, and everyone's there, and there's just watching him. There's Beast, there's Polaris, there's Gambit, there's Natasha, there's Kitty, all these familiar faces. And you see that he's been on quite a journey, and the fact that he now remembers everything is just a great journey, considering the trauma that he's gone through. And we see Leech is still there. We see Sabretooth is still there from last issue. It was just a great story. I really enjoyed everything that was done with this. I can only imagine what comes next. And I would imagine that Colossus and those folks in the Eurasian Republic are probably in some deep doo-doo now. Now that Logan remembers who he is and has this extra, ability that he's gained since being the Winter Soldier. I can imagine it's going to be some rough times for those who support Colossus and Magic and Omega Red. But yeah, I absolutely loved this story from start to finish. This issue was just downright wonderful. The art from Alex Lins, I've always been a fan of his. It just added to such a great story, and I am just over the moon with how things turned out, and I can't wait to see what's next. As I said, I knew at some point it was likely to overtake Ultimate Spider-Man as my favorite Ultimate Universe book. I did not think it would be done in 6 issues, and yet it has. And the way they've done it, the way that Condon and Lens does it with this issue, but also with the work from Alessandro Capuccio, in doing the art in the earlier issues, just everything has just been wonderful with this story. I can't wait to see what's next is going to be downright dreadful for the Eurasians. But again, we shall see. But that is my number one book for this week. Been screaming it from the rooftops to everyone who I've been speaking to, but absolutely loved it. There's a review up on the website. It got over a 9. I would probably say it's closer to a 9.5, but that is my review. That is my opinion, at least. But that is my number one book for this past week. Ultimate Wolverine, number 6, from Chris Condon and Alex Lins over at Marvel Comics. And so, there you have it. My top 5 books for this past week. Storm, number 9. Batgirl, number 8. Imperial, number 1. Star Trek, number 32. And my number 1 book for this week, Ultimate Wolverine, number 6. And that does it for this episode, the Comic Ben Comic Book Podcast. Next time, got a bunch of books that we're going to be taking a look at, or at least through the week that I'll be reading, and we'll see which books break into the top 5. First up, over at Marvel Comics, I'll be looking at issue number 5 of One World Overdue. We get the midway mark of this 9-issue event, looking at Dr. Doom as the Sorcerer Supreme. Also, I'll be taking a look at Ultimate Black Panther number 17. Then there's a new series that'll be debuting with The Depth of Silver Surfer number 1. And then finally, I'll be taking a look at Eddie Brock Carnage number 5. I've kind of been enjoying that series, looking at Eddie as the host of the Carnage symbiote. It just hasn't done enough to break into the top 5 or even the honorable mentions, but I have been enjoying it. Over at DC Comics, over at DC, we'll be taking a look at Absolute Batman number 9 from Scott Snyder, as well as Action Comics number 1087 from Mark Waid. This looks to be a Superboy story set in Smallville during Clark's younger years. Also out, I'll be looking at Batman and Robin number 2, not because I'm enjoying it, just because I have to. I just haven't been feeling the story that Philip Kennedy Johnson is doing. Although a bunch of folks seem to enjoy it, I just haven't. Now, one that has grown on me is Dark Patterns, and that is out this week as well, with Dark Patterns number 7. Again, it started kind of slow and creepy with that first arc, but this last arc with the ventriloquist was really good, and how that story turned out. Also out, we have Aquaman number 6, Green Lantern Corps number 5, and then we have the second issue of Sophie Campbell's Supergirl series. And then finishing things out at DC, we have 2 debuts. We first have Trinity, daughter of Wonder Woman number 1 from Tom King and Bella Ortega. And then finally at DC, we have Robin and Batman, Jason Todd, the follow-up series from Jeff Lemire and Dustin Nguyen. And then moving on over to Image Comics. Moving on over to Image, we have Transformers number 21 from Daniel Warren Johnson, as well as Geiger number 15 from Jeff Johns and Gary Frank. Then finally, closing out at Image, we have a new series that is debuting, and that is Gehenna. I hope I am pronouncing that correctly. Gehenna Negative Aggression number 1. So, got a couple of things at Image that I'll be reading. And then closing things out for next week are the titles that I'll be reading or have read. Going on over to IDW, we have Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles number 9 from Jason Aaron. I already have a spoiler-free review of that issue up on the website already. So if you want to take a look at that, please do so. It was a good issue. I think, just like the rest of this series from Jason Aaron, just wonderful work with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And then closing things out at IDW and for my week will be Star Trek Lower Decks number 8. So that does it with the books that I'll be taking a look at for this coming up New Comics Book Day. As I mentioned earlier, my con schedule. So, I've been talking about going to San Diego. That's already been solidified. But also on my calendar for this year, I'll be heading out to Heroes Con in Charlotte, North Carolina. That's going to be in a couple of weeks, the weekend after Father's Day. I'll be heading out there for that. Then back home in New Orleans, we have GalaxyCon New Orleans. It's their first show, their inaugural show, and I hope to have some folks from GalaxyCon on the show one of these weeks to talk about what brought them to the Crescent City. I've had the pleasure of going to a few of their shows, one in Raleigh as well as in Columbus, Ohio. So I've enjoyed their shows. They have a good lineup. It is very different from what you may see with Repop or with Fan Expo. But they do have a very good lineup. I mean, one of the things that I've enjoyed about going to GalaxyCon events has been their lineup of professional wrestlers. I grew up watching wrestling as a kid, so seeing some of those legendary stars from back in the day is always a highlight for me. And then, of course, there's the other big one after San Diego, and that is New York Comic Con in October. I'll be heading out there back at the Javits Center in October for that. So that is my con schedule, my convention schedule for this year thus far. There may be one or two more that I may add to the schedule, and if so, I'll be sure to let you all know. But of course, if you do have the chance to make it out to any of those events, stop by, say hi, grab me, and I'll have some things to pass out. Usually there are Comic Bin Podcast lanyards. I'll also be having some t-shirts, so make sure you stop and say hi to me. But until next week, as always, keep reading those comics, and I'll see you guys then. That is going to do it for this episode of the Comic Bin Comic Book Podcast. I'd like to thank you all for your continued support of the program. The Comic Bin Podcast, as well as the Comic Book Spot, are a part of the Comic Book Source family of sites and media. You can follow the podcast on Twitter X at comic_bin, or my personal account at BatmanFan_4life. You can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, Blue Sky, and Threads. We're all over social media. You can also follow our sister site over at thebatmanuniverse.net for all of your news and reviews in the world of Batman. Tune in next time as we give you more in the world of comic books. Again, we truly appreciate your support. But until we meet again next time, keep reading those comics.